And then Dan, if you want to say hi, so everybody knows you're
Hello.
there. He is.
Hey Dan, thanks for
How are
coming.
you? Yeah,
Excited to have
absolutely.
him. Oh, my finger's bright.
Yeah, you can come up, bud.
We couldn't find a babysitter, Dan, so we might be jumping back and forth here, but
Yeah.
It happened.
I'll jump back and forth. It's fine.
Can you all see that?
yeah,
You can hear it okay?
Yeah,
it's kind of delayed. I
but
know that, and
it's just music.
probably because people are coming in and out. And then I guess we'll just give it like another 5 minutes or so for people to log in, and then get going. I don't know if they can hear me. No.
Hey Kev, thank you for putting this together. This is so great.
I'm glad. Yeah, it's it was fun to just go back through all of these photos and memories and videos and try to tell a story with it all. So I hope a good story comes across here somehow.
Yeah, I
It's
think
beautiful.
it is. We could put a few minutes up now, and then if Adam can put in some at the end.
Yeah, it's about 15 minutes long, and it kind of includes like a virtual tour of Lima and where we work out of and some funny little moments. So
I saw the drone image.
that's all Michael Rodriguez. I didn't get to give him written credit, but thank you, Michael, for the cool Astro footage.
Yeah, that stuff's amazing.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, that's where we pack our orders right there, that little facility on Lima Farms.
Looks very different now. Just
Oh, there it is.
There's Michael's footage. And just a beautiful farm. I mean, wow.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
Progress.
It's 350 acres in Hillsborough.
Organic matter has risen 8% since John took over 10 years ago in the soil.
And right now, this beautiful horse facility is empty.
It's a storage facility.
Yeah, they were operating a horse farm out of there, and they're no longer doing that.
So Adam, people are still signing in, it sounds like?
Yep.
Okay.
7 4. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's all while we're loading, I'll sometimes just set up a time lapse. So those kind of capture how many clouds went by the time we load up and get me out of there.
The cows being moved from one pasture to the other.
If you want to go on, I'll leave.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Adam, let us know when you kind of slows down the people signing in and we'll get going.
Yeah, everybody that's signing in, I hear, is that a beep every time somebody signs
I
in?
think so, yeah.
That's John Lima there.
In the blue hat.
Blue hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those just joining, while we're joining, we're enjoying some footage from Lima Farm and some other,
Market
farm
events.
markets and things like this. And we'll get kicked off in another minute or so.
I would enjoy this.
What?
I mean, this is like my this is all of our office. I love it. Coming to work, it's like, wow.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
Yeah, so John raises exclusively Black Angus because they're just good for beef economically and good beef in general. And then Dan, I'm sure when he chimes in, he'll explain he does more Hereford and Jersey cow, which are better for dairy.
They don't have enough trees for the cows, so that's the solution right there, that picture you saw. They move that shade.
Yeah, everything's got to be mobile. I love the clever solutions all these farmers come up with.
Yep, and Lima is one of the few farms that breeds on the farm, so you'll see the calves with the moms. The milk cows.
Yeah, he breeds right on the farm.
Hmm.
And
That must
now
be a
he's
fun
got
day.
he's got a USDA inspected slaughter facility. So the cows will be born and never leave the fields and never leave the farm, which is the ideal situation for a regenerative farming practice. Because the most stressful time for an animal is when they're transported 2 hours at a speed that they're unfamiliar with to a facility to get slaughtered, and then surrounded by a bunch of animals from other farms that they don't know. You know, it's the meat's only going to get better, the end product.
This was Michael Rodriguez
Yeah.
They're
filming
so
with the
curious.
Yeah, they're
drone.
so curious what's flying above them.
You could tell the dominant one, the alpha cow there.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this a good place to pause and we'll come back to it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
sounds good.
We go to the chickens next, so.
Okay, well, we have 28 people on right now.
Nice. Hey, everybody.
You scooch.
Some great faces, some new names. This is great. So I'm Ron. For those that are joining us for the first time, my wife Virginia, Farmer Dan from Spring Run is with us.
We're doing.
So he's a hardworking dairy farmer, and that's everything that we're going to touch on today. We were just showing video clips of Lima Farms where we operate from. I'm just talking about his operation. He raises cattle for beef, Dan for milk. And one of the things that we wanted to touch on in this particular meeting or connection is how important dairy farmers are. I also want to greet Jen and Kevin. She yelled at me for this last time. Not really yelled at me.
I didn't yell.
Made me aware.
She yells at us all the time. What are you talking about?
Deservedly
Who do you
so.
think gets it the
We're all
most?
over the place. So yeah, I want to thank them for being here. They're always a great advocate and team. I've been working with Kevin for years at this point, since Jersey City days. And we're all in like this whole mix together of providing our community with better quality food. They run the Weston A. Price Foundation, so dairy is a great topic of conversation because obviously that's one of their pivotal points is to get people back to supporting local food systems. And with all of the intricacies and uncertainties and regulations put around dairy in all of our states across the country at all different levels, it just gets really confusing. And at least now there's organizations and businesses that are trying to share what actually the information is and not just pulling people in directions through commodity and agriculture to sell you something without actually having a base to it. It's really just a marketing tactic. I mean, Jen shared with me the other day a link that Walmart is going to start processing milk. I mean, what is this? Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we giving all of this power and, I don't know, support to billionaires that don't really care about the end product or what it's doing to its consumer?
Yeah, we heard someone say they're manufacturers, they're not farmers.
Yeah.
But on that note, one thing that we did learn from Dan directly was the skim milk, that whole situation. Maybe that's a starting point to
Yeah,
really bring Dan in.
I think it's great. I think Dan, if you want to just go in and talk about what you do, and then we can start getting into the nitty gritty.
Sure. Yeah. So I started milking cows 10 years ago now. I graduated from Delaware Valley College, now university, and got a loan to build a new dairy barn and started milking cows on my own. I wasn't raised with dairy cows. I was actually raised with beef cattle. My dad did just what John Lima did in the sense that we had a cow-calf operation. We had about 50 brood cows that had calves every year. And then as opposed to John, we didn't finish the steers and the heifers. We just sold them as feeders to other farmers that would then finish them out. So, I grew up on a farm raising cows and hay and stuff. And, I wanted to do a little little more cow work. So that's why I floated towards the dairy aspect of things, because if anyone knows, dairy farming is a little more hands-on with the cow handling aspect. You got to milk the cows twice a day, feed them, take care of them, take care of their calves. You know, every little aspect of their life I have a hand in. So that's how I got started. And then 3 years ago, we took the big leap and put in a processing facility on our farm and started bottling our own milk. It's whole milk, cream line, non-homogenized, low VAT, pasteurized, low temp VAT pasteurized milk. So it is certainly a little different than what you're going to get in the store. It looks different and it tastes different. And that's what we're going for. We like to be a little different, but the idea of it being fresh, we milk the cows ourselves. I feed the cows. I do everything, that revolves around all the cows. And then we also process the milk and bottle it ourselves and sell it to people like Ron. So to have a hand in that, every step of the way is pretty important, because, I can tell you, anything you want to know, from, that little baby calf the first day it's born to, an 8-year-old cow, and, how they produce and their names and dispositions and everything like that. So that's, one of the very special parts about owning dairy cows and having that, unique connection with them. So that's a little history on how I got started and the direction that we came from.
Wonderful. And then, so if at this point, can I just shoot some questions to you so you can elaborate? It's questions that you and I have already talked about, when we come and pick up and visit.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it. Whatever anyone wants to know, I'm happy to talk through, and to the best of my abilities.
So we all know, most of us on here, that the selling of raw milk is illegal in the state of New Jersey. Whatever reasons from the Board of Health or Department of Agriculture, it limits Dan from being able to sell raw milk to the consumer. But in all reality, based on politics and economics, giving a dairy farmer its immediate contribution to a person, direct to retail, puts more money in their pockets and less in the pockets of those that own the commodity. Can you just explain that, Dan?
So that unique perspective in terms of the ability to sell raw milk as opposed to not, is purely the large investment that's required to go the processing route. So raw milk, it can be bottled right out of your bulk tank. You milk the cows right into your bulk tank. It's cooled in your bulk tank, and then it's bottled right from there. Different states have different laws in terms of how it can be sold. Some states require you to sell it right from the farm. Some will then allow you to retail it in stores, such as Pennsylvania will allow that, but it requires a different set of inspections and rules. Whereas New York, I believe you're only allowed to sell it in right off your farm. So, that being said, we had to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into the processing aspect of it to, breach that gap of pasteurization. So all we're doing is the simplest form, which is just heating it up. White milk has to be heated up to 145 degrees for 30 minutes. So we go to 147 degrees for 30 minutes for our white milk. And then for our chocolate milk, you have to go 10 degrees hotter than that for 30 minutes. And that's all we do. And then we cool it right back down, all in one big pasteurization vat. And then once it's cooled down to 45 degrees, then we put it through our bottling machine. That's the other thing. Obviously, everything has to be stainless. Everything has to be recorded on a chart. You have to have proof on all your records. The amount of work that goes into this, even though it's, minimally processed, it's still a lot. And it was a large investment to do so. But we got into it right around the pandemic timeframe, because our milk that we were shipping through our co-op everyone, as we all know, was experiencing a lot of issues with processing, whether that be, plants shutting down, having trouble getting people to work, whatever the issue was. And there were a lot of stories of dairy farmers having to dump milk. So the commodity milk price really tanked, and it was lower than, it was historic lows, well below operating costs. So anyway, the writing was on the wall for us to kind of, pivot and make a change, and that was what drove us in this direction to want to start direct to consumer processing of our milk. Getting to know the people that want to buy local and fresh products. So that's how we got in that direction. But now we've essentially opened up an entire new business. I'm a dairy farmer by trade, right? I love cows and being out in the field and things like that. So to take on this whole new processing end of a business, we opened a totally different LLC, everything separate. There was a big learning curve, but we felt like it was all all required to continue to move forward in the milking cows in this state. So
just a side note, if anyone's unmuted, can you just mute your mics, because we get a lot of distortion. It should be on the
I'm
bottom.
sorry.
All good. I did it too.
Yeah, we did. We have to mute ourselves too.
Yeah.
Dan, when you introduced yourself, you used a few key words that I think most people on this call understand, but I want to break them down because that is the main difference with mainstream supermarket milk. So when you say your milk is single source, non-homogenized, low VAT,
Low back, that's right.
and pasteurized, and you're doing it on your farm. So those key words are separating you completely from any
Sure.
milk you would pick up at the farm, at the supermarket.
Right.
Would you break down each category and what it means?
Yeah, so it will start from the very beginning in terms of a single source product. Most dairy farms produce a product. A milk truck comes every other day. They pick up our milk. It's sampled and it goes to a large creamery where all those farms that were on that truck were all mixed together, and then it gets pumped into a large silo where it's then commingled with lots of other truckloads from lots of other farms. So there obviously is no way of saying, oh, well, this was my milk specifically. So the single source aspect is my cows produce this milk. It goes from, my bulk tank where it's cooled. We pipe it right over to our processing unit and right into the pasteurizer. And then obviously right into the bottle. So it's a very, it's a streamlined system from cow to bulk tank to pasteurizer to bottle. It never leaves the farm. Kind of like Ron was talking about with the beef aspect and slaughtering. We do that exact same thing. Everything we do is right on the farm. And that's why I like to emphasize we have total control over everything from the cows, what they're fed, how we treat the cows, how we milk the cows, as well as how the milk is then processed and bottled, stored, and sold. So everything in between, that's what the single source really drives home, is it's our product through and through. And then so once that's done, then we put it in the pasteurizer. Most commercial milk or grocery store milk, I'll call it, is HTST, so high temp short time. So they're running lots of milk through a pasteurization machine at a very high temperature for a smaller amount of time, in sense killing all the bacteria that's in there. Our milk is only pasteurized to the legal limit that the Department of Health requires it. So like I touched on, that 145 degrees is a key mark. We pasteurize 2 degrees over that for 30 minutes, hold it there for 30 minutes, and then cool it all the way down to 45 degrees for bottling. And then the last thing is it's non-homogenized or cream line. Milk in its natural state will separate. The fat globules in the milk are large particles and they actually float to the top. And that's what milk would do if you set it on the counter or you leave it in your fridge. It rises, the fat rises to the top. So that's why our milk is called cream line, because grocery store milk is homogenized where it goes through the process of breaking apart those fat globules so they stay suspended throughout that milk. Main reason for that is aesthetics. You know, back in the day, they wanted that product to look uniform on a grocery store shelf. So it didn't have different levels of fat from one bottle to a next or from one brand to another. So the aesthetics of it, but you're putting that milk through a whole other process that's not really required. So we just skip that all together and just put it in the bottle after it's been cooled down after the heating process. And you know, it's as simple as that. I try to, you know, emphasize that we try to do the minimalist that's required by legal standard.
The homogenized aspect, I heard, I don't know, you can correct me, but it's also the commercial milk also gets homogenized because it is from all these different farms. That
Not necessarily just because it's from all different farms. It's just the aesthetics of keeping that milk uniform in a jug. So when you put it in a jug, you know, they want it all standardized, you know, and that's why the milk from the store, there's skim milk, 1%, 2%, and whole milk, right? They all have different percentages of fat. Ours is whatever the cows are producing. We are not skimming any off of it to make it a certain, you know, 1 or 2%, whatever it may be. So that extra step again of skimming the milk or homogenizing it, those are all steps that, you know, we don't do, that are not required. You know, the more the processing, the more you're taken away from the milk. Essentially, it's as close to the natural state as we're legally allowed to get it.
So we are starting to get some questions in the chat. I'd also, if it's okay with you, Ron and Virginia, and you, Dan, I'd like to invite people to come on camera and ask questions. In order to do that in an orderly way, you'll see a reactions button toward the bottom of your screen. If you click that, you'll see a button to raise hand. So if you raise your hand, that'll give us a way to kind of track who has questions, and then maybe if somebody answers your question or asks it first, you can put your hand down. So it's a good way to manage. I actually have one myself. There's one in chat as well. So I'm going to raise my hand so you can see in the participants list my hand going up. Let's start with the one in the chat though. First, thank you so much, Melina says, learning so much. Also a kind of a random question, but how can the government know exactly the degree your milk was heated to? So that kind of couples with a question that I had, which is like, what is the inspection regime that you are subject to, and what does that look like?
So it starts with monthly inspections in terms of sampling audits. So the Department of Health comes every month and takes samples of the different products that we produce. So white milk and chocolate milk. And they take those back to their state lab and get them tested for bacteria levels, bacteria levels, fat levels, and things like that they're monitoring. And then when it comes to the the actual process of knowing where we pasteurize the milk to, is everything's recorded on a chart recorder. So there are 2 different sensors or probes that are on our pasteurization vat that are checked every 3 months by the Department of Health, and they record on a big circular chart that looks like a clock the time as well as the temperature at which those probes are reading the milk, as well as your airspace. So you have to pasteurize your milk to 145 degrees. So as that milk rises, there's a little pen that's recording on a chart the time at which we are doing it, as well as the temperature at which those probes are reading the product, as well as the airspace. So everything, they're tamper proof. Everything's wired and sealed with the Department of Health's seal. And so we can't change or fiddle with any of that. It is a state regulated machine. So each chart has to correspond to a specific batch of milk. So right now, our wintertime, we're processing 2 batches of white milk and 1 batch of chocolate milk. So those 3 batches each have a corresponding chart that will show its temperature curve, how it went through the whole process, heated up from the 36 degrees that we start at from our raw bulk tank all the way up to the 147. You can see it held at that temperature for 30 minutes, 32 minutes, and then the plunge back down to that cooler temperature at which we then bottle it. And then we also, we have the 3-month inspection, and then they also do facility inspections throughout the year, as well as farm inspections too. The Department of Health wants to inspect my farm, as well as the creamery at which we're processing the milk.
Fascinating. Awesome. Brooke. You're on mute, so I'll ask you to come off mute.
Okay, am I on mute?
You're good.
Okay, wait, I want to start with this. I want to say, Dan, thank you. I'm in the kitchen, I'm cooking, and I'm going to cry. We're really, really pleased with this product. We're really grateful. We drink a lot of Irish black tea, and man, that creamy milk is just the thing to accompany it. I also want to say that when we run out of milk, I'm in Hoboken, it's a city, we go to, real quickly, we'll go to the bodega and get a half gallon of homogenized, it's organic, but it's homogenized, very pasteurized, all those things. And it is $7.49. So we're really grateful for the product that we're able to get through you. Here are my questions. I would like to know, I have two actually questions. Homogenization, is there a health benefit to an unhomogenized milk? Like, I understand what happens in appearance and that aspect of it, but yeah, is there anything health-wise that makes it a benefit to have it unhomogenized?
To my knowledge, I would say no, other than it's one less step that milk has to go through. Health-wise, I can't say with any certainty that it is a healthier product because it did not get homogenized. I can't attest to that. It's the truth by saying it's one less step. So that's less processing, the better the quality. That's the only way I can emphasize that to you. And I want to say thank you for supporting us. I love that you have that in the background. Thank you.
Okay. Great question, and thank you, Dan. That's a great response. And next up, I only see you as iPhone, so I'm not sure what your name is, but I invite you to come off mute and ask your question. All right, well, let's go to Mark next, then, and we will circle back. Mark, come on off mute.
This is a reminder.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. I'm used to doing Zoom on my computer. But hello, everybody. Thank you, Dan. This is fantastic. I have a question around kind of based on my personal experience. I'm lucky enough to have been part of the Bone and Foods journey for a long time now. I think I've known Ron and Virginia for almost 10 years at this point. And one of the things that we've noticed is that when our customer gets bought into our mission and starts realizing that, there is this better quality food out there where people are really giving the food like their full attention and taking the processing very, solving for the processing like you are, Dan, and providing the highest quality possible, and in this regulatory environment that we live in. And my question is, do you feel like your consumers are getting more educated? Do you see like incremental gains in your sales, and do you feel like long term, like we will have like this this better educated population that will support people like yourself that are pouring their heart and soul into their food?
Yeah, I'd really like to think that's the way we're trending. Certainly it is true with when you look at just basic milk sales, how we've grown in the past 3 years from where we started to where we are now. So that is certainly the case. Getting more people on board with a fresh local product as opposed to just a grocery store product, definitely. And to me, that is half of the fun, is showing people and kind of just enlightening them as to, you know, this different way of doing things, right? And, you know, smaller single source products that are out there. And in terms of dairy, it's so few and far between. There's only 2 dairy farms in the state of New Jersey that actually milk cows and process their own milk on the farm. So the uniqueness of what we're doing is very fun. And then for me to get to meet our customers that come directly to our farm, we do an open house every year. We do a Christmas with the cows every year. And for us and my family to meet and, you know, correspond with all these wonderful people that are supporting us now over the past 3 years, it's amazing. And it's really fun to, you know, to answer the questions, to, you know, have conversations just like this one tonight. It's really fun. And, you know, I don't want to be doing anything else but continuing to push the, you know, this local movement essentially of fresh local dairy. So
I think
Awesome. Thank you.
I think I was the iPhone that had no name. I apologize. I can ask my question real quick. And I did not assign myself a name on Zoom, so I apologize for that. Dan, so my question kind of goes back to, I think, what Brooke had said a little bit, or aligns with that. So this might be kind of weird, but I have toddlers, so I breastfed not too long ago, and I often associate like the things I used to hear with that milk to, like, you know, things with dairy, and in terms of, like, you know, don't shake it, don't heat it up too much because it loses some of its nutritional value. So I try to, that's really what drew me into like your product and, you know, raw milk and those sorts of things. Just obviously like the higher nutritional value, it's just the way nature intended, it's less messed with. So like my question is kind of similar to what Brooke said. One is, I think you touched on the homogenization, but also like just you heat to the minimum, right? So, or more or less. So I assume it retains more nutritional value being less heated. And then I'm also curious, like, my toddler, we have the same spring run dairy that Brooke had in our fridge. My toddlers love it. My sister, when she was little, used to drink those like shelf stable milks that were super, like, I assume they were like nuked, and that's why they're shelf stable. Like, that's probably the opposite end of the spectrum. So I'm just curious, like, can you speak a little bit to like the nutritional value and like heating it less and that sort of thing?
yeah, so I'm gonna just touch on it because I can't, you know, attest to the scientific aspect of whether the milk is exactly healthier, you know, better, more nutritious, right? My argument is the less you tamper with the product, the more that nutrient aspect is going to be retained in that product. So those shelf stable, you know, milks or creamers or anything like that you're talking to, yes, that's a great way of putting it. You know, they're nuked. They, you know, there's nothing beneficial in those other than, you know, the basic nutrient compounds that's left. I'd like to think that our milk still has some beneficial, you know, bacteria that's left in there that's good for your gut health. You know, it's not going to be like raw milk because we are heating it up. But when you're heating milk up to 200, 220 degrees as opposed to 140 degrees, 145 degrees, I think that makes all the difference in the world in terms of the quality and the taste. I think the biggest thing is going to be the taste of that milk. When you drink our milk compared to store-bought milk, it tastes totally different, and it's because it was processed different. So that's where it goes back to, absolutely. But I truly believe that our milk is, you know, a little more nutrient dense because of the less processing that goes into it, for sure.
Thank you. As a parent, it gives me a little peace of mind to give my kids your milk.
No,
So,
thank you. We appreciate the support.
So Dan, we have a question that came in through the chat. Erica says, love what you're doing. Can you tell me more about your cows? Do you treat them with antibiotics, prophylactic, or as needed? Also, what are and how are they fed?
Sure. So we are not an organic farm. So if I'm just going to go right to it. If a cow gets sick on our farm, we will treat her with antibiotics. I'm looking out for the well-being of my animals. I want them to get better as quickly as possible. With that said, again, when it comes to, health inspections and things like that, our milk, just like every other milk, has to be tested for antibiotics. There is 0 antibiotics in milk that you buy, whether that's through my milk or through the store, because it's all very stringently tested at the lab, at the creamery, as well as our farm. So I actually had to get certified to test my milk every single batch and run antibiotic tests on it. Even though I already know there's no antibiotics residues left in the milk, there are certain withholds that you have to abide by. So if a cow is treated with antibiotics, you have to withhold that milk from the milking line, and you have to dump that milk. So it just goes right down the drain. It doesn't get fed. It doesn't get anything. So after that milk withhold is done, then I can take a sample from that cow, test it against the antibiotic test kit that we have. And if it comes back negative, then she's cleared to go into the bulk tank with the rest of the cows. But the antibiotic aspect is very stringent, and it's the same thing with that chart recorder and showing the proof of the temperature and the time. I have to have and show all my negative tests for every single batch of milk because I tested each one. So with that aspect, my cows, I try to take care of them as best I can. I try to limit any antibiotic use. Antibiotic use is only used when a cow gets sick. That's plain and simple. That's the only way it goes. I don't, by any means, we're not, dosing cows with antibiotics just to keep them, healthy. That's not how life works. That's not how cows function. They're healthy because we take care of them. They're fed a great diet. They have fresh air. They get fresh bedding. They're milked every day. They're taken care of. That's how you keep a healthy herd of animals. With the aspect of what we feed them, they are fed a ration of corn silage and hay that we produce, and some grain and some minerals. They have grass that they get to when we actually have it. Obviously, there's no grass outside right now. So everything they get is grown right on the farm. I produce it. I store it on the farm. I feed it to the cows, and then they produce the excellent quality milk that we have.
Great. Mark, you still have your hand up. Did you have another question? If not, you can put it down. If otherwise, come off mute. It's your turn.
I don't actually. I'll take my hand down, but thanks again, Dan. I mean, really, this is and I'm going to be. I've been drinking some raw milk, but I'll be picking up your milk as well. Sure.
Super.
Dan, I have a question. I guess it's really like a 2-part question. Number one, because you're there on your farm, do you drink raw milk, like from your cows, just because you can and you're not, regulated? And the second question I have for you is like, you've dedicated like your whole life to this. This is your business. It's your life. What do you love the most about being a dairy farmer? So those are my 2 questions.
So I'll start with the second one. My favorite part of being a dairy farmer is hanging out with the cows all day. It's certainly a different lifestyle. I don't see a lot of people. I don't go to an office. I don't socialize with that many people on a day-to-day basis. I see my mom every day. I have an employee that comes in, my dad, my wife, but by no means am I going in and seeing lots of people every day. But to me, that's the best part, is just being able to be with those cows. You form just the most special bond with them, because they're born on the farm. We name every single one. We watch them grow up. We watch them turn into a mother cow and have another calf, and watch the generations grow. That there's nothing more special about taking care of those animals and watching them grow. So that's my most special part. And to answer the question is, I don't drink my raw milk. My reasoning is I have a whole refrigerator full of pasteurized milk that we produced. There's no reason for me to be taking it out of the bulk tank. There's always milk left over in the store that I'm trying to use instead of dumping out or donating. So we keep our pasteurized milk in our refrigerator here.
Awesome.
I love your answer. Thank you.
No waste here.
Yeah, can you talk about waste? Is how you manage? You touched on it a little bit, but
Yeah. So obviously, we do take orders every week. So, for all the customers that we provide milk to, unless they have a standing order, we just ask that they put in an order at the beginning of the week so we can plan our bottling schedule accordingly. We try not to overproduce our pasteurized milk to the best of our ability. So, sorry about that. So at the end of every week, we fill our store, and anything that's left over after our next weekend, and we have a next batch to put in, we collect, and then we bring down to our local food pantries, and we donate all that extra milk every week that we have left over.
Okay, and we have a question on the chat. Do most of your customers pick up at the farm, or do you deliver?
So we deliver on a wholesale business. So someone like Ron that's buying large quantities, cases of milk every week, we deliver. We deliver to a lot of other farm markets, stores essentially, but we do not, do any home delivery or anything of that nature. And we do have an on-farm store. So customers that are in our, general vicinity come right to our farm and can buy milk right from our farm store. But we do supply to quite a few other markets in our local, county area.
Dan, where are you? Where is your farm?
Our farm is in Pittstown, New Jersey. So we're, 10 minutes off of Route 78 and about a mile from Frenchtown, right along the Delaware.
Got it. And do you make butter on the farm? Do you make cheese, other things, or is it mostly just milk?
So that was part of our business model when we went into this, was to keep things as simple as possible. We were going to focus on one product only. So we decided to go with fluid milk as opposed to learning how to make cheese or butter or ice cream or any of those other, wonderful products that you can make from milk. We decided just to go with fluid milk. And most of that comes down to knowing how to produce a good product. So as I said, I'm a dairy farmer. I'm not a cheese maker. In order to produce good quality cheese, you have to be a good quality cheese maker. And that I just don't wear that hat. Maybe one day we learn how to make cheese, but it requires a slightly different equipment, and it's a slightly different business model, as well as the butter. That would require us to have a cream separator in our processing line, to where we're skimming the fat out of that milk to make the butter. So we don't have that piece of equipment. The idea is we just wanted to keep things simple, just produce whole milk, white and chocolate milk, and that's it.
And then Dan, you and I touched on, and then Helen Capone also asked the question. I'll ask after this one. Majority of your income is coming from commodity milk, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Can you just break that down in terms of how important retail sales, direct to consumer, is versus being dependent on commodity?
Yeah. So, in the grand scheme of things, starting processing milk 3 years ago, it's been a upward trajectory the entire time. It's been wonderful growth that we've experienced, and I think it's far exceeded anything that we, would have imagined, when we started this whole process. But with that said, in order to, cash flow and pay bills and, run a business on a day-to-day aspect, 3/4 of my milk still goes through my dairy co-op that I've been a part of since I started milking cows. And that's where the bulk of my revenue on a monthly basis comes from. We are slowly ramping up our, process of bottling milk. So, I can't by any means jump ship from my commodity, my farmer co-op, because I don't have nearly the capacity to sell all of my milk bottled and sold through that direction. So yeah, I'm still heavily reliant on my co-op. But obviously the more I can transition into bottling myself, the better the business model looks, because at the end of the day, when I can set a price for my product like we're doing now, having total control over that from start to finish, the better off your business is, as opposed to just receiving a price a month after you already shipped your milk for whatever the market decided to be that month, after all your fees and deductions are taken out of it. So, that is how most farmers function across the country, is as a commodity basis, whether they're selling hay, corn, milk, beef, they're commodity products. So they're getting a price that the market dictates. They are not setting the price, essentially. So that's the biggest difference that that we've realized is, we're price setters now, not price takers.
And just to emphasize on what Dan's saying, that is a big reason for our food system collapse during COVID. It's a big reason that things economically are not fair to most farmers. I mean, Dan knows that, this state alone had 100+ dairy farmers, not even 40+ years ago, but they all got out because they can't survive financially, because big markets like Walmart, big stores are are taking commodity milk, setting the market price, and these farmers are basically subservient. It's not right. It's not the way it's supposed to be done. Farmers are supposed to be feeding their community. The more people that we can get to Dan, the happier we are. I mean, this is, we're working with a school program right now that's it's got $5 million in grant funding. And it's been in place for almost 12 months, and they're about to lose $4 million in grant funding because none of the schools are using it to improve their children's food. This is a grant-free program to improve the quality of the food that these children are getting, and some of these districts aren't even touching it. Why? I don't know. Is it too much work? Too much? It's probably a lot of ignorance. Milk is milk to them because they're not taking part in these conversations that Dan is having right now. So the indoctrination, this system is broken, hands down, period. If we get another COVID, if something else like this happens, like, we are going to be so dependent on a small farmer community that isn't going to be able to produce enough for us. So we want to avoid that and start building that resiliency now. So we should be telling everybody, go to your farmer, support a conglomerate that's at least sharing farmers' products. We want to be competitive in this game, in this field, because we want to make sure our communities can thrive and live and survive and not be so dependent on these external sources. Commodity agriculture is a problem. I'm just going to leave it at that. Dan, the other question I had for you, we always talk about this. Explain the milk fat. Because
We touched on it briefly, but we did learn from you.
Yeah, go into detail about because this is all part of the commodity too. Big companies take this milk and they turn it into 15 different products because they skim all the fat off the milk and turn it into 4 or 5 different added value items that they make money on, not the farmer, that they make money on. And so where did this whole 3%, this whole milk to skim milk to 1% scheme actually initiate and start from, and what does it actually mean?
So the gist of it goes down to standardization, being able to have a product that's the same, across the board. So that starts with skimming the cream, which Ron was just talking about. So they have different products: skim milk, 1%, 2%, whole milk. So whole milk is a standardized fat percentage of 3.25%, as opposed to 2% and 1%. If you were to ask the general public what they think the fat percentage of whole milk is, they'd probably give you a very large and probably a much higher number than 3.25%, because it's just the way it's advertised. When you say 1% or 2%, well, then whole milk must be 5 or 10%, and that's where a big misconception is, that the fat in milk is what is making people obese, which couldn't be further from the truth. Skim milk is a better product because it doesn't have that terrible fat in it, which is such a farce, because it's a good fat and it's a healthy fat. It's naturally produced. When you consume anything in moderation, it's going to be a much healthier product for you. So our milk is not essentially standardized. It's whatever the cows are producing. So our fat usually runs about 4 to 4.5%. We milk a lot of Jersey cows, which have a higher fat percentage and a higher protein percentage than your average Holstein cow. We do milk some Holsteins, and they actually help blend our milk back down to a little lower fat percentage. If we milked all Jerseys, we'd have a 5.5 to 6%, and the milk would actually have a yellow tinge to it because of the higher fat content. So I think our milk, with some Holsteins blended in, has a better, presence on a shelf, as opposed to a little yellower product. But we wanted to touch on, the whole milk in schools thing. And you're not allowed to sell whole milk in schools to kids. It was a law that was put in place back in 2011, I believe, or 2012. And so it because they thought that whole milk, selling schools whole milk was making their kids fat. And as opposed to the vending machine with soda and Gatorade and Monster Energy right next to it, that those things are healthy for you, right? But the 1% extra fat in milk, that's what's killing you. It's very silly when you break it down, and it's very simple when you look at it this way. So it is something that they've been working on pretty hard to get whole milk back in schools. And there was a grassroots movement in Pennsylvania called the 97% movement. And it was to help emphasize to the general public that whole milk is really 97% fat free, right? Because it only has 3.25% fat. So when you put it in that perspective, it kind of makes people realize, oh, okay, well, it's not loaded with 50% fat. And it's just the consumers not knowing, and that's why it's important for us to to share this kind of information with people, because they just don't know. It's nobody's fault. It's just something that gets left behind, and you don't really talk about it. Who talks about fat percentages in milk? It's not very common dinner table talk. So
I mean, that's the problem with everything in our food system. It's the learning curve, and not having direct access to the farmer, and having the commercials put in our face of the products that they're trying to sell. So
there used to be an issue with false advertising, but everybody's falsely advertising these days, and there's no regulations. There's no one setting limits to these things. So people are just telling you what they want to hear, labeling what they want to do. There's no label police out there telling you can and can't do this.
I know you get scrutinized, you get all the inspectors, but nobody's inspecting the.
And where you are, Dan, like you're always very positive. Like it's just like, oh, people need to learn. But in my opinion, you know, the people that are at the top are very well aware in a billion-dollar commodity industry that it's better to keep kids off whole milk because then they have more control over that product, period. That's how I look at it. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't know. But when I know money and power can go a long way, and there's a lot of money and a lot of power that none of us understand. I mean, to a whole other level.
And lobbyists exist, and things need to be sold.
Yeah.
But Adam, there's more questions coming in on the chat. Do you want to take care of those?
Yep. So let's circle back to one that was received a little while ago, which was, I don't know who from, it just says iPad, but are there any regulations you have to follow for transporting your finished goods off the farm? Or are most of the regs more like at the farm level and the pasteurization point?
Yeah, most are going to be driven around the actual processing of the product, the creamery inspections, the on-farm inspections. The only thing we can do to help provide a safe product is transporting our product to other markets in a refrigerated, temperature controlled van. That's about as far as we're going to control, take that into our control. So that's what we do when we do our milk deliveries. We're doing it in a refrigerated van. And that's one more step of the process, and one more added cost to this business is a refrigerated van. Ron knows refrigerated vans are expensive, right? So we went out and bought a cheap used one, and we're constantly trying to find newer ones to upgrade to give us more capacity and more ability to travel a little further with that milk in a safe manner.
I'll take your old ones.
Okay.
I'm
So
serious.
yeah, when it comes to delivery off the farm and inspections of that nature, it's a little less, it's a little more hands off. We just do what we can to control that.
Great. Are you okay if we ask a few more?
Absolutely.
Okay. Vlad asks, what would you say is the barrier to entry for new dairy farmers in general and specific to New Jersey, given your experience?
I'm going to just jump right to expense. The cost of whether that's buying a farm, having a barn to, milk your cows, the equipment to do it. Everything is so much more expensive in New Jersey than out in the Midwest or anywhere else, and that's why the farms have diminished. The value of the land that they sit on far exceeded the what those farmers could actually produce and make a living on. So bar none, it's going to be the expense of getting into it. I was very fortunate and blessed that I'm milking cows on my grandparents' farm. My dad was a farmer. My grandparents owned a farm. So I was fortunate enough to already have a base, and I went out and built a barn to milk those cows. And I have the full support of my dad, who farms, having extra equipment, his knowledge, all those things that go into it. But the cost of doing business is astronomical, especially in New Jersey.
Melina also had her hand up before. I don't know if the question was already asked, but if you want to come back on and ask, feel free.
Hey, I have two questions. My first one is, colostrum has been getting a lot of attention on social media recently. I'm curious what your thoughts are on colostrum in general, and if you think it's getting the love it deserves.
So my extent of colostrum love is directly to the calf that the mother produced. When a cow calves, obviously the colostrum is what's coming out first. So when any of my cows calve, I'm milking those cows separately into their own separate bucket, and then that milk is getting fed directly to the calf for the next 5 days to 8 days directly from that cow, to know that they've gotten all the colostrum from that cow. I personally would not want to drink colostrum. It is far different looking and texture than what I would be comfortable with. But I know there are people that do it, and if it's an up and coming thing, that's an interesting topic of discussion. But it's not something that I would venture with. So.
Understandable. And I'm curious, what do you wish people knew more about the work you do and the product you deliver?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to into activists essentially, because when it comes to any animal agriculture, there are a lot of people in this world that truly think that we don't care about these animals, and it couldn't be further from the truth, because if we did not care about these animals, they would not produce any of the products that we wanted in a good way. So taking care of these animals, it literally has to start with them. You can't go to work every day and abuse these animals and think you're gonna make a business, a profitable business out of it. It does not work. So it has to be the amount of time and effort that we spend caring for these animals and taking care of them every single day. I don't know if anyone noticed, but we just had 0-degree temperature for the past 3 or 4 or 5 days. And, I am outside in most of those temperatures, taking care of these animals, making sure they have food, water, bedding, everything like that. So that's something that we really got to drive home, to show how much we care about what we're doing in these animals. It's not just a business where you make money, because I'll tell you, we don't make a ton of money. There's something we could be doing, something else and making a lot more. So it's not a big money making scheme by any means. So that's what I want to drive home to people.
Dan, we've heard in the area farmers have had problems with activists. Have you had any on your farm?
We haven't had any directly on our farm. We certainly get heckled through the social media, Instagram, Facebook. Every once in a while, you get a troll coming through to shake the bush and see what falls down. But the only activist that I've heard of that actually made a presence on a farm was up at Pete Southways up in Sussex County. They actually did show up to his farm with signs and tried to make a stink, and he called the cops immediately, and they were escorted off the farm. So none directly on our farm, thank goodness. It is a fear of mine, having to worrying about that, because we do have our farm open to the public. People can come and buy milk right on the farm and see the cows and see the calves and see everything. So it's definitely a fear, doing and operating this business, that we're going to get someone like that just blows something up that is a non-issue. So
Dan, I think Mike Recchia has a question. Mike, do you want to come on and ask?
Yeah, thank you. Where are my videos now? There we go. Okay, so thanks, Dan. My family drinks your milk, and I have 2 questions. One pertaining to the milk we buy, and one that's more theoretical. The theoretical question first. It seems like a lot of what's preventing getting this type of milk into the hands of consumers is unfair regulations that are making this type of sound business practice less profitable. Have you thought about what supply in this space would look like if those onerous regulations were lifted? And do you think that would be enough to establish a broad, sustainable, local milk market in the way that you practice it? And then second, more practically, do you have any good techniques for getting the milk fat off the sides of the carton when it's been sitting in your fridge? I just vigorously shake it and hit it, but any advice you have is very welcome.
yeah, I think you're doing the best you can there with the vigorous shaking. Obviously, the longer that milk sits, the more that fat is gonna accumulate at the top and on the sides. So, and that goes to freshness, if you can get it, the fresher the milk, right? Our sell by, freshness date is only 12 days. Most, stores are going to require milk to be, 18 to 22 days minimum to have a shelf life. So we're far under that. Yeah, so just shake vigorously. And I can't think of any real good regulations that are going to free us up. And it's more awareness, I think, and more education to people. People are just so used to buying milk in the grocery store that's what they're going to continue to do. And I think a price thing too. A lot of people go to a grocery store and are looking at their bottom dollar and how far it's going to get them, and obviously our milk is going to be more expensive. So when it comes to a price thing, we tried, the way we marketed our product is I certainly didn't want to be the most expensive product out there. I wanted to be a little more cost effective. So it opened our market up to more people. But, at the end of the day, spending $4.50 on a half gallon of whole milk compared to, $2 or $2.50, that makes a big difference, especially in times where people's dollar isn't going nearly as far as it used to. Obviously everything in the grocery store is more expensive nowadays, so I'd like to think it's a cost thing. People don't realize that we have the most disposable income to go towards milk in this country, or to food in this country, and they just don't use that for their food. So
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Dan, I'm going to ask you the question about organic milk. I want you to explain that to everyone. And then I want to touch on a nutritional side of the colostrum and the raw milk disrupting a gut, not disrupting a gut versus the more pasteurized. I'll touch on that. Just if you can, there were two questions that I can answer with more awareness on, and Kevin can chime in too if he wants as well. But yeah, can you explain the organic milk process the same way you did to me?
Yeah, but, Dan, I was telling Ron, one thing that what you said, people go to the supermarket. I know a lot of people that don't care about where the milk comes from, but they look for organic milk in the supermarket. So
yeah. So I'd like to, it kind of touches back on what Ron was just saying, where there's not a lot of accountability in terms of labeling of all these different things and, how things are produced. So, organic kind of falls into that category where, people are just using it as a baseline. Okay, we're doing the bare minimum, and that qualifies as organic. But when it comes to the milk aspect of, organic milk is heated up to higher temperatures than most your average grocery stores milk. So when you go to your local grocery store and look at most of the organic milks, and they're going to have a longer shelf life than the grocery store milk right next to it. And that's because it's heated up even higher than the HTST. It's called it's called UHT, right? Ultra high temp. So I brain farted there. So it's pasteurized at over 220 degrees. So the for put it in perspective for me is the health inspector that comes to our farm. She actually said they have to use oil to test their probes on that processing facility, because water would boil before they could actually check the proper working function of those probes in those pasteurization process, because it gets heated to such a high temperature. And the reason for that is organic milk is coming from further away. So it needs to sit on a shelf, sit on a truck, sit in a processing facility, whatever it may be, for that much longer, because it's coming from further away. So that is the biggest difference. You look at organic milk compared to our milk. Our milk isn't going to last a month or more. And that's a good thing. When
But
something,
Dan, what are they doing different to be organic at the end of the day? Like,
they're certified, so they are not allowed to use antibiotics at all on any of their animals. To
but you're
me,
taking that out of you're taking the antibiotic milk out of
correct.
regulation anyway.
Correct. So that's where, to me, that's where I would draw the line. Because when it comes to animal care, and I can't speak to how an organic dairy farmer treats their animals. You know, I don't have that wealth of knowledge to say this, but if I have a cow that gets, you know, a respiratory disease because we've had 0-degree temperatures and now we're going up to 60-degree and then it's going to come crashing back down again, I want to be able to treat her with antibiotics to make sure that cow gets better. I'm not sure that an organic dairy farmer can do that and still keep that cow on the farm because she was treated with antibiotics. They have different rules in terms of how what their feed is, right? We're producing all our own feed on the farm. You know, so there's a whole list of things, right? Your whole property has to be certified, and it's a 3-year process of going through the organic process. And it's just that's not something that we were, you know, looking to do right now. You know, I feel like we take care of our animals and our ground to the best of our ability, and I don't need an organic label to make that happen. I'd rather just produce a local, fresh, wholesome product to sell to our local community rather than bringing in organic milk from who knows how far away.
And you don't spray your fields.
Right. We are growing all GMO free corn, soybeans, alfalfa. So all of our crops are all conventional crops. So we're not spraying any Roundup on our crops.
And then just the last two questions: how many farm? Only because, you know, we want to touch on a few other things after this. How many cows are you raising for milk right now?
So our barn will hold 50 cows. That's the capacity that we can milk at any one time. So that's what we're milking right now is 50 cows.
Okay. And then, you know, I think Joe Heckman might still be on this call. A lot of your boy calves that are born, you sell, you're now selling to people, you know, Joe Heckman to raise, which then we are processing later for its meat products, so that we're keeping it all in, you know, decentralized and within the community. You used to have to auction them off, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I never used to, you know, to be honest, I don't know if I ever have taken bull calves up to market. I've always tried to find backyard people to sell my bull to. But with that said, I also, whatever I don't sell, I raise ourselves and we get our beef processed and sell it in our store. It's just dairy steers, bull calves, you know, jerseys, Holsteins, whatever we have at the moment, that we're raising ourselves as well.
Okay, so that leads to the other question from Jane. She wants to know if you what else do you sell in your store besides milk, and do you do farm tours?
Yeah, so we sell obviously our milk, white and chocolate milk. We sell ice cream. We work with a small ice cream shop in Frenchtown, and they buy all of our milk and they make ice cream single sourced with our milk only. And it's Sandy Scoops in Frenchtown. They make awesome ice cream. So we sell a lot of ice cream through our store. We sell our beef, obviously ground beef, burgers, you know, all the steaks. We have freezers right in the store. We sell eggs from another local farm, Herring Family Farms. We sell a lot of their eggs through our store. And then we've recently started working with a cheese maker, Jersey Artisan Cheese. He comes down every week and buys milk from us, and he makes mozzarella, burrata, scamorza, and a couple other Italian cheeses. So we sell some of those cheeses as well in our store.
We're gonna have to talk to Sandy, see if we can sell that ice cream.
Yeah, it's dynamite.
Yeah. We can deliver the ice cream.
So to touch on we thank you, Dan, for all of that. If anybody has any other questions, definitely raise your hand. We're kind of getting tight on time. So I appreciate you, Dan. Everything that you do, we all do. I started shedding a tear when Brooke was giving you graces, and I saw a smile on your face. It's great to see like the community getting together and giving a shit. Pardon my French.
You said you were gonna address the 2 questions that.
Those are
Yeah.
so the health and nutritional questions. So Helen Capone just left. One of them was hers. Her husband has issues digesting pasteurized milk versus raw milk. That's definitely a bacterial issue. There's probably an overgrowth of a certain bacteria that can't feed on that the lactose free and mineral free and bacteria free pasteurized homogenized product. But the raw milk provides that natural bacteria to help in the balance of the bacteria in the colon and in the intestine. It is that simple. Just as everything else, balance in the ground, balance in our soils, balance in our health, balance in our colon, bacteria is very important. The other question was about the colostrum. Colostrum, even for any mammal, the colostrum is the most important part of the milk process for the initial stages of development. So the animal that is producing should be fed, the calf or the boy or the human should be fed the colostrum. That should not be a market product. That's just, you can get ample benefits of nutritional health from so many other aspects. The fact that we have access to meat all the time, you get the same nutrition. You're getting a punch with colostrum, but unfortunately, mass media marketing, social media marketing, everyone's trying to sell a product and put an emphasis on it. Like, we don't need to drink cow's milk colostrum to be optimal. That is for cows. I will go along that and say, yes, you should be feeding that to the calves. Milk is a survival food. We don't even need milk in our diet to survive. We have access to meat. We get the same proteins, the same fatty acids, the same amino acids, the same minerals, the same nutrition from eating a steak that we do from drinking milk. The difference is milk can be turned into a million different valuable products. Even in our own home, we had milk that was aged 10 days and she turned it into ricotta cheese. So we've been putting cream-lined ricotta cheese in our salads and just taking spoonfuls of it because it's so fantastic. So it's beneficial. It's great. We don't need people who don't understand farming and enterprises and small social media. What are they called? High profile influencers telling us what we should and should be consuming. Because first off, we don't all have access to it, but we do have access to quality food right in our area that is amply nutritious and can serve everything that we need. And I'm attest to that. My health is getting better as I age. I wish I had taken care of myself and ate and took and did the lifestyle the way that I'm doing now when I was 20, versus the way that I'm doing it now. And then I don't know if anybody else has any other questions regarding that. I see 3 new messages.
I actually have just a quick one on the chocolate milk. I'm
Yep.
a huge fan of chocolate milk. So I'm assuming, well, actually, can you just say quickly where you get your chocolate from? Is that like sourced locally? Is there like a partner you have, or?
Unfortunately, we deal with a flavoring company called Dunkirk Flavors. The only thing I can say, a lot of people are obviously against, high fructose corn syrup. It does not have high fructose corn syrup in it. It is made with sugar. So that is one thing that we've tried to work through. But yeah, we don't have any, affordable way of making a chocolate syrup and sourcing it locally. That's the route we've gone.
Yeah, I'm still in. I'm 100% in. And so I guess one of the last questions I wanted to make sure got asked is for all the people who are learning and really interested in having your milk in their refrigerator. I'm assuming they can get it through Bone In, and that's the preferred way to get it. So I just wanted to make sure that's correct and make sure that's said explicitly so that people know where to go to try this out.
Yeah, definitely buy through us, everybody. And Adam, we are not selling his chocolate milk, so you're gonna have
Not
to
yet.
drive. You're gonna have to drive
yet.
out here
only because of what there's just added ingredients that you know,
That's fine. If I have to drive down to Pittstown myself, I will get that chocolate milk.
Well,
it's quality chocolate milk. Noah drinks
Wait,
it.
Noah drinks it at home, so
Noah-
we should be carrying it. He loves it.
That's fine. I understand.
And in the holiday season, they do have a heck of an eggnog too.
Oh,
So
yeah, you guys make it.
yeah, the eggnog is really good.
Very good. Very good.
Eggnog.
And
Eggnog,
everybody
so
has
good.
until 12 p.m. tonight to get in your orders, and we have 24 cream line milks in stock. So
Boom.
fill up your fridges.
They're
Get it
in-
on Friday.
They're in stock, but we don't have them in.
Oh yeah, they're dropping them off tomorrow.
That's the way we work. We put it in online, but we don't actually have it. Dan still has it.
Mhm.
So on that note of Adam, of you coming out here, we wanted to show pictures of our last volunteer day that we had.
Yep.
Dan, I think you know we moved out to Flemington to a 10-acre property.
Yep.
Not officially a farm yet. It lost farm status because it wasn't farmed for 3 years. So we're slowly doing what we can, and
We got a few pawpaws in the ground. I got about 100 pawpaw and persimmon seeds that we're gonna get going.
we had this small volunteer group come out and we planted 9 blueberry bushes, seedlings.
We had to plant them close to the house because the deer will destroy them.
Well, we separated in 3s. We did 3 by the house and then another 3 more farther away. So we'll see how things evolve from there.
Nice to see the dog helping out.
Yeah.
And then they came out. I had to put a little acidity in the soil. It's an organic acidifier. I could even use pine needles to make the soil more acidic because blueberries need acidic soil. And when we had ours tested by Joe Heckman in the Rutgers lab, our acidity was a little low, but he did say our soils are pretty well established and good, mostly for pasture. But we're trying to get an orchard going. And I think, over the course of the next few years, that big field in the back behind them,
That last picture, Adam shows one of the bigger fields.
that's our biggest field. And we would love that to be a kind of pick your own orchard at some point. We just got to work with the NRCS and the USDA to help us with funding for fencing and, making sure that the deer don't destroy them. Because we have about 15 deer that sleep in those fields on a nightly.
Yeah, they've made a home here.
Yeah, they're comfortable. And I haven't got my depredation license or hunting license yet. So if you see venison on the menu and bone-in's menu anytime,
So
my wife just rolled her eyes.
So on that note, we're gonna try and set up another volunteer day for the spring. So we'll keep everybody in mind, and Dan is very close to us here, so if you guys want to stop by his farm, we're all in the area.
And Pittstown and Frenchtown, that whole area is beautiful.
Gorgeous.
It's such a gorgeous area.
Okay. So big thank you to you, Dan, as well, again, for all the time fielding all these great questions. Is this a good time to wrap things up and play the rest of the video?
Yeah, Kev, if you want to add anything while the video's playing, you
please.
made the video for us, so.
Sure. And you guys as well. It's kind of a narrate it yourself type video.
And you gotta wait till the ends because there's a
Yeah.
really great part at the end. So
Wait for it.
And also, Kevin, speak a little bit about the Weston Price Foundation too. I mean, I know most people here are probably familiar with them. But
yeah, westonaprice.org. Check it out. If you're not familiar with Weston A. Price, he was the dentist that's considered the granddaddy of nutrition. Like the whole idea of connecting the food that you eat to the health outcomes of your life, in a sense. Nobody, once the processed food was entering the markets in the early 1900s, people didn't realize that it was not doing well for their health as these Crisco's and soy lecithin and fillers and everything entered our food supply. So Weston A. Price proved that indigenous cultures had really great health and found what key components of their diets and lifestyle really led to great health for generations. And there's a foundation that was put together many years later to honor his work from the 1920s and 30s. So as a chapter leader, then we do monthly meetups and teach about the principles that Weston Price put forth, eating healthy fats, ferments, you name it, all of the things that Bone In really specializes in. This is your one-stop shop for Weston Price style eating here. So lots of bone broths, eating nose to tail, cooking certain plant foods and eating certain animal foods raw. This is all kind of laid out through Weston Price's principles, eating from land and from sea. Which is something great that Bone In actually offers, is some really good seafood options, which we never really touch on. But we've been loving the steelhead trout and the scallops, and all locally sourced and humanely harvested and whatnot. So Weston A. Price is also that the website westonaprice.org is a really deep archive of all of their scientific journals from 20 plus years. So plug in any kind of search terms that you might want to look up, health conditions, food related stuff. It's all about food, farming, and the healing arts, and has a bit of an activist end to it as well. So that's when we do our meetings and get everybody together and create a community around our local food system. So, and here comes Noah on the four-wheeler there.
He's about to take us on a tour of the flowers.
So I got hours of these flowers, man. Every time I drive by there, I would take some footage.
So this is when you drive into to get to where we work out of on Lima Family Farm.
Yeah, that driveway leads to the farm market and the Lima family house. And then we'll get into some shots again of our loading area that we do the packing of the orders and store some of the food and dispatch to the drivers.
And how beautiful this food all looks. We call this our food porn.
It's definitely hard to work on this stuff and not get hungry. But was that clear enough about Weston Price? You
Yeah,
guys
that's
have been
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
We have special guests like you guys come and speak. I do a lot of cool topics like fermentation and rewilding your lifestyle and living more like our ancestors, and how to eat this way. So.
The cool thing about Weston A. Price Foundation is you can look up a chapter leader anywhere in the world. And if you're going on vacation, you can look up a chapter leader and ask for their resource list, and they will give you a list of all the local farms and places around their area that you can get this good food basically anywhere. So it's a great
Jen's pup Willie.
Yes, that's our dog out on the farm. Anytime I'm out there, she comes and she's helping us. We were packing turkeys for Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving packing with Willie.
Yeah. And there's Michael Rodriguez, who did our drone footage.
Yeah.
And Noah's always helping out.
That's Noah's job.
He helps us organize cartons.
He gets paid.
We do pay him. It is not
These are the veggie shares.
Yes, very ample, awesome veggie shares.
Radicchio.
Yeah.
Radicchio. That didn't come out this year.
persimmons. So we're growing these. We're hoping, in 5 years we'll have some production.
And then your heritage breed turkeys here every Thanksgiving. They are a huge hit, and get the whole team together to do it. So
that's Jen. If anybody doesn't know, Jen does our customer service. So when you're getting text about when your food is coming, that's Kevin's car.
Generally has
at max capacity.
Very low visibility.
Willow worked hard on the farm that
really
day.
And then any chance I get, I do these time lapses when I'm out there. And this was just a beautiful full moon on the rise with the cows grazing in the right there. And I don't know, like this is what gets me going. I love, I'm not a farmer, but living in support of farmers and working in that beautiful space between farmer and consumer This segment gets us into kind of like it's time to dine. Like it's that's way back when you guys had done a pig roast at Lima, and
Yeah.
that's now where we do all the packing. But
Yeah, the facility looks very different. So just to touch base on that part, because we do have a lot of people on here who took part in that project. We are finished building out the Lima facility. We have a 220 square foot cooler room now, 12 feet high. The whole idea is to not utilize the space as a warehouse, but instead to get food in and get food out as fast as possible. So we're really trying to minimize our how much we put into the infrastructure and keep it sustainable and keep things moving. So obviously there is a lot of money that goes into the labor to do something like that. So it's working. We're sustainable. We're figuring it out, and we're able to produce more and serve more of the community little by little. But right now the facility is right where we need it to be. It looks great, and I want to thank everyone that's been constantly supporting us and helping us and getting us to that point. So we are there, and we want to thank you. I wish I had shared photos of that. If anyone's interested in seeing those photos of the finished facility,
You shared them in some newsletters, right?
yeah, I think I did share in a
so
newsletter.
People got them, I think.
yeah, well, consider this part one of many to come here, because there's a lot to chronicle when you do this.
Yeah, there really is.
Kimchi, I saw kimchi there. That's on my list.
Oh, yeah.
That's another Weston Price chapter leader, Anne Marie from Pennsylvania, who makes that herself and grows a lot of the veggies and herbs and things.
So we are at time for tonight. So if
Yeah.
anybody feels like they need to drop, they can at this point. We're going to continue to watch the video. If anyone wants to stay on, we'll be on for a few more minutes.
It's probably like 5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, but just want to invite people to not feel obligated to stay. I need to go.
Yeah.
But do stay.
That's
Because stay
another
for the strawberries. Ready? Oh,
Yes, jam-packed car.
my God, driving around with all of those strawberries. I was like,
That was a school
That was a school donation event here.
in Asbury Park. We did that for 2 years.
oh,
Yeah. It's a grant-funded program, so the school received the grant from the state to put towards nutritional seminars and food for the parents of the students that attended this after-school program. So it is in a low-income area of Asbury Park, but the parents are required to stay and learn about nutrition. They are required to stay and learn about self-healing and lifestyle techniques to improve the health of them and their household. And then afterwards, the grant funding went towards purchasing food from us to serve to the 100 families that were in attendance. And we do that bi-monthly for the last 2 years. So it's actually been a very successful program. And Davisha, the superintendent at that school, has very valuable information, and she's actually been sharing it with other superintendents of other school districts to influence them to get on board with that type of program, so that our not only the kids in the school, but the families have access to these foods.
oh, and then we just started doing these lunch and learns, which I hope to see blossom. I love this idea of getting a few people together during their lunch break at like an educational institution. This was a community college, a culinary department. So getting some FaceTime in front of people who are either teaching or learning this stuff, albeit more from their like industrial approach, but to get out in front of these people and kind of show them, hey, there's more than one way to go about this thing, this food thing. So
That was a really cool day. Oh, that was a really cool day because we got to teach teachers. They were all teachers on their lunch break, and we did 4 sessions, 20 minutes each. And the teachers came in, and they were really, really blown
here's the
away.
part. Ready? This
wait,
is last
wait,
little.
wait,
Wait, there
wait,
was one little tag on the end there. Oh, well, you watch it at home, guys. You get a good laugh.
Oh no,
I'll put it back. Hold on.
Adam, you got it.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
gotta bring it back.
No, Kev, I was just gonna say when you said the lunch and learn, and just I see a lot of people still on. Thank you for saying.
Oh, next video. Whoops.
Yeah, that's Kevin Spiker's next video.
Oh, it worked though. I pasted the
Is this what we
playlist
came back
link.
for?
No.
No.
Hold on, I'll go back and get it.
Oh, I see. Okay. No, I was just gonna say, and also it's the trend of saying there's a learning curve of getting people to understand and switch over from the mainstream, supermarket. And that's the learning curve, the education part. And we hate being called middlemen because we're not just buying from Dan and selling to you guys. But our mission is to bring everybody to buy directly and know their farmer and to get away from the commodity, like for them not to be dependent on it. But on that note, if anyone
is.
knows, has access to these lunch and learns, like we want to continue doing them virtually, in person. I think that's
Adam, does it have
Oh yeah, can you
sound?
raise the sound?
oh
This was April Fool's Day, packing day.
I went to
we scared Kevin.
And Kevin said, I have to go change my shorts now.
yeah. Yeah, so they had me open up one of those cooler bags and there was Noah inside it, and it just I don't know. I've been watching too much X-Files at the time, so it really freaked me out.
You know what? At the next meeting, we're going to show that full video. It's Noah's first prank ever.
He
got-
still talks about it.
Noah
Still
climbed
talks about
into one of the delivery bags and we closed it as Kevin was walking in. Kevin walks in, grabs his bags, ready to leave. And I'm like, Kev, can you open that bag? Because I don't remember what's in it. And Noah freaked him out. So we got to show the full video next time. I promise.
Great.
I'll have-
That's great.
but thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you
A
everyone.
lot of
Everyone
time
that
here.
stayed on. Yeah, I know it's an hour and a half, but we covered a lot, and so glad you guys hung out. And Dan, thanks again, man. You're doing fantastic work.
Yeah, so much information.
So
Thank
much
you, Dan.
information, taking the time. I know you work hard, brother. So we appreciate you a lot.
All right, everybody have a great night. We'll see you next time. And also we will email out a recording for anybody that missed it or wants to see anything again.
Thank you.
You.
Good night.
Bye,
night, everyone.
everyone. Get
Thank
your
you.
orders in by
Thank
midnight.
you.